In my opinion, the August 2026 update from FacePunch has been the most functionally consequential update they've done in a very long time. And while they did make a bunch of changes to the game that is relevant to just about everybody that plays the game, today I just want to be talking about the powering of the island. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rust Admin Academy, where I'm teaching you everything that you need to know about owning and operating a successful Rust server. On this channel, I do plugin reviews and tutorials, plus I want to give you all of those little tips and tricks that are going to help you be more successful. So if you're brand new to the channel, consider subscribing so that you stay up to date on everything that we're working on, and of course you'll get notified as soon as I upload new videos. Rust Admin Academy is 100% funded by the viewers of this channel, so if you want to financially help out what I'm doing at the Academy, head on over to SRTBULL.com, click on the join button in the top right hand corner, and become a premium member if you want to help out. All of my videos are freely accessible on YouTube. I do also still have a free Discord. The premium Discord is just for people that want to help me survive in this very expensive game. So like I said in the intro, this update has been the most functionally consequential update in a very long time, meaning we can actually get items from the game that we've never been able to get before. So in years past, we've said things like, why doesn't the water treatment plant actually produce water? Why don't the oil tanks at the dome actually produce crude oil? Well, now they do, as well as a couple of other little features along the way, but don't worry, we're going to cover everything on today's video. So first things first, absolutely nothing is going to happen on the island until we actually have power. And so logically speaking, where should we be getting power from? Well, of course, the power plant. And if you've ever been on the outside of the building in the center of the power plant, you might have noticed something different. If we look in through this window, we now have a new fuse panel that wasn't there before. But how do we get in there? There are two entrances to the main power plant building, but the entire power plant itself has to be powered up. Now, we're all used to having to power this up because we were just going in there for loot, meaning we were getting in there to do the puzzles. These doors still power up the same way, and yes, those puzzles do still exist, but we have to get inside the building in order to put the fuses in to power up the island. So same as before, we have to toggle a switch on one side of the power plant, and then we have to go all the way over to the other side of the power plant to get to this building right here to turn on this switch, as well as activate this timer. Once we've done all of that, the two entrances to the main power building now have power, and then we just need to use green cards to get in there. There's one entrance on this side of the building, as well as another entrance over here. Swipe the green card, and away we go. Once you're inside the building, we've got two different areas that we need to put in fuses. Now, these aren't the typical fuses that we've used in the past. These are the heavy fuses that have since been added to the loot table, and you should be finding them all over your map. Important side note here, if you are using any kind of a loot controller on your server, alpha loot, better loot, whatever it happens to be, and FacePunch adds an item like the heavy fuse into the game, you have to go into your loot table and adjust where and how many of these items are going to be found. Most loot controllers will add the item into the loot table, but they don't make any adjustments to the rarity, how often it's going to be found, which containers it's going to be found in, etc., etc. So you have to go in every time that FacePunch adds an item, you have to make these adjustments. Now, the number of fuses that you install into each one of these fuse panels, and like I said, there's two of them, is going to determine which items around the map are going to be powered up. So if we go in and install between 1 and 3 fuses, it's only going to power up very low level items around the map. The car lifts at Auxums Garage, the freezers at the supermarket that will actually have food in them, and the roadside power transformers. Now, if we only have between 1 and 3 heavy fuses installed in this fuse panel, power outputs from those transformers is only going to be 12 power per port. And talking about those transformers, you're going to see that these power poles look a little bit different than they did before. So now we can climb these power poles to access these transformers. And with a wire tool in our hands, you can see that these outputs now have 12 power on each one of them. So we can run this power directly to our base or to a battery or whatever it is that we want to do, but we can make use of this power as long as there are heavy fuses installed at the power plant. If we go back and install between 4 and 9 heavy fuses at this fuse panel, we can increase those outputs to 18. And if we have 18 or more fuses installed in here, which means we have to include the other fuse panel as well, then that output becomes 30 power per port. So we can have up to 90 Rust power coming out of a power pole that we can utilize in our bases. So to get there, leave that fuse panel, go around this corner just over here, and you're going to go through this door, and you're going to go up these stairs, and just over on the right hand side here is the secondary fuse panel. and you need this other panel in order to get to phase 4. Anyways, so these lights on top of the fuse panel are telling you which phase you're in. So obviously when it's red, you're at phase 0, which means nothing has any power. If we put just one fuse in there, you can see that it changes from the red light to the green light, indicating that you're at phase 1, which then powers up the items that I've already talked about. When you get up to 4 heavy fuses, that will put you into phase 2. So at phase 1, we can go to an Auxums gas station and we can now utilize this door as well as this car lift if we want to be doing maintenance or changes on our vehicles. So you can lower the lift, drive a car on there, and do what we're used to doing with car lifts. We're able to do that at Auxums Gas Station now. And that's all done with phase 1 power. Another benefit to phase 1 power is the sperm kit now has a freezer inside of it where we can retrieve food. So just in and to the left, we now have the meat locker that's now powered up, and we can open that up and we can take that food out and do whatever we're going to do with it. So now one of the things that has changed since the first implementation of this power system is the AirField event was supposed to be unlocked at phase 1 power. I have just found out that that's actually not true anymore. So the door that you need to access in order to get to the terminal upstairs isn't opened yet until we're at a higher phase. Now at phase 1, in order to activate the water treatment plant so that we can actually retrieve fresh water from all of the different spigots around the map, we need to go into this building right here and we need to insert a gear. Okay, and so right now as I was recording this, I saw these 2 lights over on the other side. When I was at phase 1 power, obviously only one LED was green, which obviously indicated to me that I needed to be at phase 2 power. So things have changed since I first started looking into this. So I've now gone back to the power plant and I've added 1 more fuse. Actually, I added 3 more fuses to take us to phase 2. Now that I'm at phase 2, I've replaced this gear as well as the gear on top of this tank right here. And now I'm just opening the valve for as long as it goes until it stops turning. And you can see my little pressure gauge there is increasing as the wheel is turning. And apparently you have to do both valves. I guess that makes sense. I don't think there's any documentation out there right now indicating that there are 2 gears that need to be used as well as 2 valves that need to be turned on. And now we've dealt with both of those gears and both of those valves. You can see that our water treatment plant is now powered up and you can see that it's actually doing something in the middle tank. Once that starts happening, you can see these water spigots, which are all over the map, not just at this location right here, are now spewing out water, and we can go in there and we can deal with the water that's coming from those. Now it's important to note that with the water, you can actually take the water out using water jugs. You can see that we can fill our water up directly from this spigot directly into our water jug. Now you would also be able to bring a vehicle in here that has a tank on the back of it, hook up your tanker truck to these spigots, and then of course you could fill your tanker truck directly from these spigots as well. The reason why I'm saying this is when it comes to the crude oil that we're going to deal with later, that same concept is no longer possible. There are no portable player carryable containers that you can put crude oil into from the dome. But we'll deal with that later. So to recap, in order to activate the water treatment plant, you have to be at phase 2 at the power plant, replace 2 gears. One of them is at this building right here. The other one is on top of this jump puzzle that we've been using for years to get a bunch of good loot up there. There's no more loot, but we do have to replace one of those gears and turn on both of those valves. Once that's done, the water treatment plant will start flowing water and we can do whatever we're gonna do with that. So now, as you can see at phase 2, the AirField is still locked up. We don't have access to this door yet, so let's head back over to the power plant and let's bring our island power up to phase 3. All right, so as you can see by the LEDs on the top of our fuse panel, you can see that we're at phase 2. Let's add a couple more fuses until we're at phase 3. Okay, so that's phase 3. And as you can see back at the AirField, now this door is open and we can go upstairs to the terminal that is on the first floor. All right, so once we're upstairs, we can tell that only one of these fuse panels is powered up. So let's put in a fuse in that location there. And you can see that our terminal on the left-hand side is now powered up and is now charging. We need to wait until that gauge is up to 240 rust watts or rust volts, whatever you want to call it. And then we can activate what's called the expedited supply signal. Using just vanilla standards, it's going to increase the number of supply drops that are brought in for the next hour, or while this remains powered. As you can see, the charging takes a couple of minutes. We're going to wait this out. I'm going to edit this part out though, so that you guys don't have to wait. While we're waiting for that to charge up, you can see how it would be beneficial to have more than one player on your team in order to make all of this stuff happen. Can it be done solo? Yes, absolutely. But you can definitely see how it would be beneficial to have some help. So using just one of the regular fuses, it wasn't enough in order to charge this all the way. That fuse blew up, so let's just add another one and we'll let that continue charging. You can see that it almost went down to 190 watts there. 190 volts, whatever it happens to be. Rust power, I'm not sure. All right, so at 240, we did see it change on the screen there. So now we've increased the rate of supply drops being dispatched to 2 times what it was from vanilla settings. Now, obviously, if you're using a plugin that is controlling airdrops, then this is going to change, could become moot, but this is how this functions from vanilla. So having a look at our power gauge here, this is indicating to me that we need to be at phase 4 in order to power up this other terminal. We're going to find that out in just 1 second. I want to check and see if the dome is going to start generating oil at phase 3. So we're all the way out at the small oil rig. We're inside this room with the blue key card, and we've got this toggle switch on the door, which is going to activate for, I believe, 20 minutes. And the way to know if dome is actually producing crude oil is you can see the oil spewing out of these 2 valves right here. Plus you can open up these fuel pump looking things and see that there is actually crude oil being generated, and we could then retrieve it. Now this is really important. So you cannot try to put this crude oil into any kind of a player held container. This has to go into a vehicle that has a tank module attached to it. So you have to go to Auxums, or you have to build a car lift at your base, and you have to get a vehicle and you have to install a tanker module on that vehicle in order to retrieve this crude oil from the dome. Now, from my understanding of the situation, if you activate the switch at the small oil rig, you will produce 1500 crude oil in the duration of time that that switch remains active. But if you also activate the switch at the large oil rig at the same time, I believe it increases how much crude oil the dome is going to produce. So if we go inside the red key card at the large oil rig, you'll see that there's another toggle switch on this wall over here. We should be able to increase the amount of crude oil that the dome is producing, and I want to say it's to 4,500, but other than waiting it out, I really don't have any way of knowing that. So by that logic, in theory, you would want to have a teammate at the dome, as well as a teammate on their way to the small oil rig and another one on the way to the large oil rig. Plus, you may want to have a 4th team member building yourself a vehicle with a tanker module on the back of it so that you can retrieve all of this crude oil. Now, you might be wondering what happens if I don't want to follow the rules and I try to put this crude oil into a player carryable container. Well, let's find out. So we have our water jug selected and we've got 99 crude oil in the pump right now. What happens when we click on the take button? Okay, so I was kind of expecting it to actually like spill all over the ground or something like that and actually waste it. Turns out that's not actually the case. So you're not really risking anything by trying this, but it is also not going to allow you to do it, obviously. So it would appear that there's no risk of losing the crude oil unless somebody else comes here with a tanker module and fills their tanker module and steals your crude oil. And in order to prevent that from happening, you're probably going to want to have somebody here that has a gun that is going to be able to protect your tanker module. All right, so phase 4 power on your island is where things start to get real interesting. So let's increase the number of fuses that we have in our fuse panels at the power plant to bring us up to phase 4. So as you can see right behind my head there, all of my fuse slots are now filled with heavy fuses, but we're still not at phase 4 yet. So therefore we have to go upstairs in order to use the secondary fuse panel as well. And with 3 extra fuses in that secondary fuse panel, now our island is powered at phase 4. At phase 4, you can see that our outputs from our transformers are now at 30 each, obviously to a maximum of 90. So plenty of power that we could be using directly from the built-in grid system. Another important thing that I'd like to make note of, there are a lot of servers out there that use a plugin by Nicodemus called Grid Power. This aspect of things is not going to change the functionality of grid power at this time. Because Nicodemus isn't actually using these transformers in order to implement his grid power protocol, that functionality should, in theory, still remain the same. I haven't tested that yet, but I'm just making an assumption here because they are 2 separate items on the same power pole. Another really important feature that becomes active at phase 4 is the recycler inside the same building where you're installing these fuses increases to a 75% efficiency and reduces its recycle time down to 4.5 seconds, indicated here when you go inside the recycler. So this obviously becomes the most beneficial recycler on the map. While the other ones do have increases, it's not 75%. I think it's 60%. Going back to the airfield, I'm fully expecting this other terminal to now be powered up because our island is at phase 4. So the secondary fuse panel down below is now powered up and we should be able to insert a fuse in there and insert a fuse in here. And sure enough, that second terminal on the right hand side of these fuse holders now powers up. So So now you can see that it's going through the same process. It needs to charge up. Once this is fully charged, we should be able to call in the AirField supply drop event. While we're waiting for that to happen, it's important to note that the gauge, the power gauge on the first terminal that we were talking about earlier, is actually decreasing as time passes by, assuming that when it gets to 0, this supply drop increase will obviously stop happening. But it is cool that this information is readily available right on these screens, so that if somebody else came along, they might already know the status of what's going on the island. And same thing as before, we didn't have enough out of those 2 fuses in order to power up this event. So we're going to go back to our fuse panel, and I want to try the heavy fuses and see if they work, and they do, which is a little surprising. So they're obviously going to last longer, and perhaps we would be able to charge this system just using 2 heavy fuses. I haven't checked that. All right, so as I expected, the heavy fuses are holding up a lot better and probably would have charged this entire system without them having to be replaced. So now that we're at full charge, 600 of 600, we can press this button right here and in theory call in a Chinook event to the airfield. Cargo helicopter inbound, and that message is obviously server wide, so everybody that's on your server is going to know that this is happening at the airfield. And there you have it. Our Chinook is being brought in and our event is about to start. It should drop off a locked crate. All right, so there we have it. That's the airfield Chinook event, powered up by a minimum of 18 heavy fuses at our power plant, and then powering up and activating the terminals inside that tower attached to the airfield main building. I was kind of expecting some heavy scientists to defend this. I'm surprised that there aren't any, but c'est la vie, this is the situation. This is still going to be a contested event, so make sure you have friends that are going to help you defend this for the 15 minutes at vanilla that it's going to take in order for this to unlock. All right, now while that event is cool enough in itself, it is not the pinnacle of events that are happening at phase 4 on your island. So let's talk about the satellite crash event, because it is cool. So with your island maintained at phase 4 power supply, head on over to the launch site with a bunch of tech trash as well as an MLRS aiming module. Head into the launch site and get to the building that says the Cobalt Space Center above the door. Once you're in the Space Center, you want to head to the room that is labeled as red control room like this, and this is where the magic is going to happen. So we need to power up the terminal, so let's click on E or interact, and it's going to tell us what we need. So we need an aiming module. Now that I have that aiming module in my inventory, let's do that again by opening the inventory and dropping that aiming module into the inventory and then clicking power up. This brings up our screen. We can click on mount and that's going to bring up our control screen. Let's have a look here so we can play around with these buttons. We can change, it looks like, where it's going to land. Let's lock that in at the airfield. So we've got our trajectory is locked. Trajectory is locked, impact in just under 10 minutes. I was expecting there to be tech trash used in this event, not just an aiming module. I almost don't believe that to be the case. So based on where I selected on that map, this should be approximately the area where the satellite is going to crash, but you should see it in the skyline long before that. Oh, there it is right there. So I don't know if you guys can see that. It might be a little bit faint for you, but you can see it off in the distance there. That satellite is coming in for a crash. And you can see it for a really long time before it actually hits your map. The one thing I don't know for sure is if it actually shows up on the map as it's traveling across the sky. But as you can see, everybody on the map is going to know that it's coming, providing of course they looked up into the sky and saw it. So I'm like kind of in the northwest quadrant of the map right now. Let's just jump over to this side real quick. So that's, you can kind of see the difference when you're not facing it straight on, but you can tell that everyone on your map is going to know that that satellite is coming in for a crash landing. They may not know where, but they're going to be able to see it for a long time. And you're going to see when it comes in for its crash landing that it is traveling at a very high rate of speed. And assuming it is over the map, which it does look like it is right now, it is not showing on the in-game map. All right, so here we go. It's coming in for its crash landing. Looks great. Love the effects. And boom, there you go. Satellite crash. And we've got some wicked ground effects. We've got this tail that shows everyone on the map exactly where it's going to be. And you just have to be able to defend this for long enough for the flames to go out, and then you can loot your crates and off you go. You've successfully taken down a satellite. Again, yes, you can do all of this stuff solo, but it's definitely, you can see the benefit to having teammates while you're doing these events. You're not going to want to defend this by yourself because you're going to attract the entire server to this event, especially if the server that you're playing on is using a loot controller and has increased the amount of loot or the type of loot that you're getting out of this crashed satellite event. So once our fires go out, of course, we can go up to our crates and we can loot the goodies that are inside. And the one thing that I don't know for sure is if we can actually farm this body. We're going to find that out in just a minute as well. So this is just vanilla loot, what you're seeing there, but that's pretty good loot. Bear in mind that I had a bunch of tech trash on my inventory before, so you're not going to get 106 tech trash from a satellite event. But this is a pretty good indicator that we can actually farm this dead body here, which is great. We just have to wait for the fires to go out, same as if it were a Bradley or a patrol heli. All right, so now that our fires have gone out, yep, sure enough, just as I expected, we're able to farm this body, but it seems like it's just the main body of the satellite, which whatever, that's cool. And this is everything that we got out of just farming that body. So 800 metal, 60 high qual metal, 8 tech trash, and 3 thruster modules. Let's go back to the recycler at the power plant so that we've got the most efficiency possible and see what we get out of these thruster modules, because I have no idea. So out of those 3 thruster modules, we got 68 explosives. So yeah, people are going to be contesting these satellite crash events. I guarantee it. So on a modded server that has a loot controller, you can obviously increase all of these details. But in this particular situation, this is just a vanilla scenario. So hopefully these events are enough to engage the players on your server to be taking part in these events. They're called player maintained monuments. So I would hope that that's going to increase the engagement at these monuments because they're no longer just there to be used to gather loot from. Yeah, the puzzles and the key cards and all that stuff, that was pretty cool to start out with. But now that we've actually got these events that we can control on our server, again, I'm just hoping that this is going to increase engagement. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about the new power system that Facepunch has implemented on our Rust Islands. Have you taken part in it yet? Or are the players on your servers, if you're a host, are they taking part in it? Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section down below. Now, I didn't cover every aspect of the different phases because there was power levels that changes from the transformers that I didn't cover, but you guys get the idea that phase 1 is good, phase 2 is all right, phase 3 is pretty fun, and phase 4 is definitely going to have the most impact across your server. Haha, get it? Impact. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.